Happy Friday, kings and queens. It's finally the end of the week. We're going to jump into day 2 of our lesson of Unit 1, Lesson 2. And as always, our classroom norms are that our cameras are on, our mics are muted, and that you guys are ready to chat. So let's dive right in. So, as usual, what is it that we need for class today? Again, it's important that you're actively participating in order to get credit, but I wanted to give us a slight update for all of us. So, many of you guys are not completing the work in Google Classroom, and it's extremely important that you're keeping up with your assignments. If you've noticed, Mr. Spencer and myself have been grading assignments in Google Classroom, and they're also being put into SchoolMax, and many of your grades do not look that great so far. So I know some of you guys have had technology issues, but now that we're in actual math lessons, you will continue to have assignments, classwork, and assessments, and it's important that you keep up. That also means do not just press submit on an assignment on Google Classroom because you will not get credit. So, again, please make sure that you're actually taking the time to do many of the assignments. Over the next few weeks, your assignments will become easier as you navigate through the different technology platforms that we've been working on so far. Okay, so let's jump to what supplies are needed for today's class. You'll just need a pencil and your spiral notebook, and we want to make sure that we put today's date at the top of the page. Today is September 18th, and at the bottom of the page, we're going to label it page 4. So again, we're going to talk about scale factors today. This is day 2, so let's jump right in. We're ready to get going. So for today's engagement, we want to answer the following 2 questions. What do we mean by corresponding parts? And what is a scale factor? So let's pause the video here, and on page 4 of your notebook, let's draw these 2 triangles in your notebooks and label them. And then let's also write down these 2 questions. Let's take about 2 minutes to copy all of this down, and then also jot down your answers in your individual notebooks. After you guys jot down what it is that you have in your notebook, we will ask some of you guys to share out. Now that we've had a chance to copy that down in our notebooks, let's go ahead and discuss what these 2 things mean. So, yesterday we talked about corresponding parts just meaning the different locations on our images. So, for instance, if I look at triangle ABC, and let's look at the side that's labeled AC, and it has a length of 6. The corresponding side would be DF in our second triangle, where there's a length of 9. If I talk about BC, where there's a length of 5 in my original triangle, the corresponding side would be EF, that's labeled 7.5. And then our definition for a scale factor was simply talking about it's a number that's going to multiply some quantity from my original figure to either enlarge or reduce my new scale copy. Remember, we said that your scale factor can either be a whole number and it also can be a fraction. We said if it's a whole number, that means that my new image is going to get larger. And if it's a fraction, that means that my new image is going to get smaller. So let's jump into our elaboration activity, scaled or not. So the first part of the activity is that we're going to circle using the same color the geometric objects that are scaled versions of each other. Because you don't have access to this slide, what we're actually going to do is I'm going to pause the slide in a second, and I want you all to determine which are scaled factors. So you have a number of different shapes, and in your journals, I want you to jot down which ones you think are scaled copies of each other. After that, I will give you further directions. So let's pause and determine which one of these are scaled copies. Now, all of them might not be a scaled copy, but let's see which ones you can find. So now that you've had a chance to copy it down in your journal, let's go ahead and put it in the chat. Which ones do you think are scaled copies of each other? We'll pause the video again here so you have some time to go ahead and put it in the chat. All right, so let's reveal the results. Now, Like I said before, all of these are not scale copies of each other, but let me go ahead and tell you which ones are. So the first set of scale copies that we have is triangle A and triangle B. They are scale copies of each other. Okay, so for all of you guys that typed A and B in the chat, you are absolutely correct. The next set of scale copies that we have are actually three of them. The square C, square E, and square K are all scale copies of each other. C, E, and K are all square copies of one another. And then, last but not least, rectangle D and rectangle I are scale copies of each other. So we have A and B, C, E, K, and D and I. So now we want to pick two of the objects that are scale copies and find the scale factor. So let's take some time for everybody to choose. Either you want to use A and B, you can use C, E, K, or you can use D and I and determine what do you think the scale factor is for any one of these pairs. So let's pause the video here and allow you guys to think through some of these answers. So for the sake of time, because I want you guys to be able to practice, let's look at this first triangle. If I look at triangle A as my original and B as my new one, the scale factor to get from A to B would be 1/2. If I look at one of the side lengths, for instance, 1, 2, 3, 4 units in A and it's 2 units in B, I would take 1/2 of that. So my scale factor would be 1/2. Now, let's look at this question. Did you encounter any objects that you initially believed were scaled versions of one another? How did you decide that they weren't copies? So let's pause the video here, and I want about 2 or 3 of you guys to share out with one another. Which ones did you think were potentially scale copies but turned out not to be? And what do you think the reason is? So thank you all so much for sharing. So let's take an evaluation in our exit ticket. So pretend that your friend was absent from class today and write what you would say if you had to explain the lesson to a friend. So I want us to do this in our journals, and then at the end of time, we'll share out with one another. So we'll leave this on the screen, but I want you guys to answer the following 3 points. What the scale factor has to do with the figure and its scale copy, how you know a pair of figure has corresponding sides, and then also describe to your friend how to recognize scaled figures. So we want you to quickly write responses to these 3 points as if you were talking to one of your classmates. Let's spend about 3 minutes writing, and then after we write, let's have 1 or 2 of you share out what your conversation would look like. So let's pause the video here so that we can write and then share out. Now that we've shared out and we've written in our journals, let's go ahead and wrap up our lesson for today. So it is officially the weekend. So I just want to make sure that you guys know that we will meet again live on Monday. So we can't wait to see you then. Tonight's independent activity is going to be on Mobius Math. Now, Mobius Math is also in your Clever accounts. However, I know we've been having a lot of different technology issues. I understand. So, for some reason, if Mobius Math does not appear in your account via Clever, what I'm going to do is post the directions on how to get into the assignment via Clever. I'm also going to download a copy of the Mobius Math worksheet and attach it to the assignment. That way, if you cannot log on, you can do the assignment on a separate sheet of paper and upload a picture. So again, just because the technology may not be working does not mean that you're exempt from the activity. So, once again, today you do have a Mobius math assignment. And in order to complete it, I'm going to put all of the directions in Google Classroom on how to access Mobius Math. Once again, the application is in your Clever account. However, if for some reason it's not showing up for some of you guys, I'm also going to upload a copy of the worksheet, and you can do the worksheet on a separate sheet of paper and take a picture of it and submit it that way. That is your independent assignment for today, and it is going to be due at 11:59 p.m. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you guys have an amazing weekend. Of course, you don't have any work over the weekend, so make sure that you get this assignment submitted before the end of the day. Hopefully, you guys get some rest and stay safe. We can't wait to see you again next week.